Yes. No,
And there we go.
To see the TV.
You should send that to Zoom and say, "Come on, guys."
no, really, that was really not Zoom's fault. Let's be honest. I'm not able to see my own broadcast, but you guys can see it, right? You can see my Procreate screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Good. So I wanted to actually start from scratch and show you how it looks when you open Procreate. Just a quick overview for people who aren't familiar with Procreate. It's a third-party app. It's not made by Adobe. It's actually made by a content provider called Savage or something. And one of the great things about Procreate, if you don't own a copy already, is that it's an app that you can buy one time. So you pay $10 in the App Store and you just get the whole app with all of its features enabled. It's something that I always am surprised by because it's actually it's a robust app, and it includes, there's a lot that you can do with it. So it's a very good value for just €10. So if you open Procreate, you're going to see basically your projects in front of you. If you've been using Procreate for a little while, like I have, then you have a bunch of stacks of them. Otherwise, it'll come preloaded with sort of like default artworks. I'm not going to go too much into the interface here. I think there's a lot of material already out there on the web for people who need a complete, like starting from scratch explanation. So I'm going to show you what I would do to create an illustration from scratch. So you have the plus sign in the top right corner, and it opens the options to create a new canvas. Can everyone see? Some people look confused. Yes, everyone. Okay, people are not
confused. Yeah, not confused. Just focused.
Great. So it comes preloaded with a bunch of templates plus like apparently every canvas I have ever created before. I have a ton of them. If you're just kind of wanting to mess around, like you want to open Procreate, like get in there, mess around, not worry about it, then I recommend starting with the screen size, which is the top option. But what I'm actually going to show you how to do is to create a custom size. So we're going to tap on this little black and white folder thingy, and it gives you your custom canvas dimensions.
I don't think we can see the screen changing.
You can't.
Is it just me?
Yeah,
no, I still see your library with everything, the Procreate library.
Oh, how strange.
It's library. Maybe
No, we don't see
the broadcasting
that.
stuff.
Yeah, I wish that I could see the broadcast that's actually happening because it's not easy for me to see, but I'll narrate what's going on. So just imagine that you have tapped on the create custom canvas size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a canvas of 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. Just, you know, again, just imagine that this is also a place where you can change, for example, the color profile. So you can actually create a file. You have a series of different RGB modes, and you can even create a file in CMYK with different specifications. So Procreate actually gives you the ability to create artwork that's preparable for print, if that's something that you want to do. This is also where you can change your time lapse, and that's using your time lapse. And you can also do like a couple of edits to the canvas, like make a file with a completely transparent background. So
Maybe
I'm ready.
because we're recording, could that be what
Sorry?
Chris mentioned? Is it maybe because we're recording, what Chris mentioned, that it doesn't maybe show the changes?
Yeah, I wondered about that. If it like thinks that this is
If we
somehow
stop
private.
recording, maybe it works. I'm just
in all honesty, I've switched back to Mary's fruit bowl camera, and it's not too bad. So
yeah, the fruit bowl camera can work. I was just wondering whether it's because of.
I'm deeply ashamed. I'm so sorry.
Nothing to sorry about.
No, we should have.
Yeah, this is bad stuff from the organizers. Who organized this meetup anyway? Like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Whatever.
All right, so I have created a canvas. Can you see the canvas now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, via your cam, I turned off the broadcast thing, and
you also turned it off.
Yeah, I turned it off because it wasn't updating. It was just simply stuck on your library. So
that's what I wanted to know. Is anyone still looking in the broadcast? Can you actually see what's on the canvas now?
I think the broadcast stopped.
Yeah, the broadcast stopped.
So
I see.
We stopped it. We were looking at your fruit basket camera.
All right, you're just gonna look at the janky
top view.
Fine.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I spent so long preparing for this. So you have the Procreate UI in front of you. On the left-hand side, you have a couple of settings and your selections tool. So like a lot of apps, you have a little wrench that's for your settings, and that gives you quite a number of options. You can work with canvas properties. This is where you go if you want to export or import content. And then you also have settings for your time lapse and just kind of general preferences, like whether you want your interface for your left hand or your right hand. You can even get into messing with the settings for your pencil and doing the pressure curve and things like that. I'm not going to go into all of those in detail, just so you know that they're there. And the settings, selection tools are something I'm going to get into when I show you the actual illustration. So if I imagine that I'm starting this illustration from scratch, I'm actually going to start by changing background color. So the way I do that is to click on the little layer panel, which is the 2 squares. And you click on the layer that says background color, and that brings up your color selection tools. If you've used Procreate before, then you'll know that you have a few different ways of looking at color. You can do hex values, you can actually do a color harmony, which shows you like complementary colors, or you can use like one of their preloaded palettes. I'm going to go old school and just use the disc. And I'm picking sort of like a greenish color that's going to be for like the background, which should be something like a sky. And then if I'm normally approaching an illustration, what I do is I begin with a sketch. So I'm going to use one of the Procreate standard brushes that comes preloaded. If you open the brush panel in Procreate, you'll see that it's, I mean, must be 100 different brushes in these, in all of these sub layers. You have different styles of brushes. It's pretty well organized, but in my opinion, it's a little bit overwhelming when you first open the app. So if you are someone who's like new to Procreate, I recommend like don't mess with most of those brushes. I actually don't even use most of those brushes. I think they're a little bit of overkill, to be honest. So I would suggest starting with the very top brush, which is sketching, and the very top setting, which is peppermint. This is a fantastic sketching brush. You can do all the sketches in the world that you want with this brush, and there's no need to use one of the millions of other brushes that Procreate loads for you. So I'm going to get my peppermint brush out, and I'm going to change my color to black so I can see my sketch. And let's see if you can actually see what happens on the screen when I start drawing. It doesn't look like it's really that visible on the iPhone.
No.
No. Do you want to try with the broadcast again in case that actually works?
Yeah, we can retry it. Just for, let's see.
Let me give it a shot so you can actually see what I'm drawing, because that's the point.
But your narration is already pretty awesome. So it's
I'm glad you like, I'm so glad the narration is helpful. Let's see. So I want to do, am I already presenting? Oh my gosh, how did we do this last time? Screen mirroring.
So I think you might have to initiate the share screen on your laptop, and then
laptop.
it probably will show. Yeah, first start there, share screen again. That's
yeah.
the one. And then
Yes. Okay, let's try. I would like to race whether you're going to be able to see the drawing that I'm doing here. Can everyone see?
Draw something?
Can see it.
Let's see if it's live. Yay!
All right, great. Move on. Yeah.
Now we're going.
Really wish. Okay, fine. Great. Let's forget about that pencil. So actually what I just did is a good teachable moment, because I was just redoing and undoing a bunch of stuff as I was doing these scribbles. Something I really love about the iPad is that you can use gestures to undo and redo, and actually a few other things. So undo is to tap the screen with 2 fingers. Redo is to tap the screen with 3 fingers. You don't have to tap on your canvas. You can tap to the side or really anywhere that it's going to register the touch output. It's so convenient. Drawing on paper, I myself tap on I'm cool and very stylized lines here, and maybe like a ground. Ooh, that looks terrible. Undo. Better ground. And actually, I'm going to show you something. When you're drawing a straight line in Procreate, if you draw with the pencil and at the end of the line you hold it, the line will become straight. Procreate does this automatically. You then get the option at the top that says Edit Shape, and it says Line. And you can then rotate the line in different directions. Are you all seeing that update on the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. In case you say you draw the line and you would like it to be at an angle, so you can change it. It's really helpful if you need to actually draw straight lines in Procreate. You can also do it with circles, but we'll get into that later. So there's my ground. My ground is looking fine. I think I'm going to draw a fat bird on the ground. And yeah, it looks like a fish with legs. Who cares? Now let's say like the sketch is fine, but I think I'd like to tweak the composition a little bit. So I'm going to go up to my selection tool, which looks like a funky S. It's in the top left corner of the screen. I think I can actually see my screen there now if I can get a chance. Yes.
Yeah.
Now I can actually see what I'm doing. Brilliant. Yeah, so you can see that the funky S is highlighted, and you have a few different options here for what kind of selection you want to make. If you're familiar with Photoshop, then you know that you have a couple of different, like magic wand. You can do like a rectangle selection if you want, or I could do an ellipse selection if I wanted. What I'm going to do right now is freehand. I think I'm going to select my big tree, and I'm going to move it a little bit. And I think I might actually stretch, and I'd like the trunk to be taller, but I'm not going to stretch it. So I'm going to draw the trunk a little bit differently. I'm going to move the small tree a little closer just to bring the elements into a more unified composition. And then the bird fish can go next to everything. Okay, so I feel okay about this sketch. Like it's fine. Maybe I'll zoom it out a little bit. I scale it down. Just did that with the arrow tool. I'm using my fingers.
Should we check if there are any questions at this point, since it's kind of it's already something?
Yes. Sorry.
The guys with the iPad, how are they doing? Following the steps so far?
Very much following along. This
Your
is
silence.
for me. Yeah, I think it's quite clear. The only thing I didn't understand, because I never really get the hang of that, the switch between selecting something and starting to move something. Did you make a switch between tools there, or can you just start doing that?
Yes, you do need to. So after you make your selection, I'll do it again. I'm using the select tool and say like I'm going to select the top part of the I can actually move the selection immediately like I would Photoshop. I have to go to the arrow, and then I have the option to move whatever it is that I've selected. This is also where you might distort the thing that you selected. So like if I wanted to change the shape, like I could switch to here. I have this option that says distort, and then I can be like, woo, crazy tree. Or however, like if you need to create a shape that has a sheared, like you would in an Illustrator or somehow skewed. That's not the tree that we're drawing today. Today's tree is a little bit more calm. So I think the sketch is fine. And anyway, we have to move on to the illustration part of this presentation. So the way that I like to order my layers is I want the sketch to stay on top. With Procreate, it's a little bit difficult to create a layer exactly where you would like it to appear. Anytime you create a new layer, it's going to appear directly above the layer that you have selected at the moment. So I'm going to select my sketch layer, which is layer 1, and I'm going to click the plus. Layer 2 appears immediately. And since I want the sketch to stay on top, I'm going to click and hold layer 2 and drag. Now, I don't typically name my layers. I was thinking about this because Daniel asked me previously about my layer organization system. I find what you'll find is as you're working with Procreate, and if you look at the example I'm about to show you, Procreate will show you like a small preview in your layer panel of what's in that particular layer. So if you're drawing something that's fairly distinct, you can actually just use this little preview to kind of keep track of what you're drawing. Once you start getting into a composition that has a couple of 100 layers, this isn't possible anymore. So then you start needing to think about groups and naming, which I'll show you a little later. But for a pretty simple illustration, actually, you can just kind of get by with keeping your layers at the default names. So now I have layer 1 on top, which is my sketch, layer 2, which I'm going to start drawing with. I'm going to do some kind of like tree-ish green color here, maybe like a little on the blue side just to make it more fantastical. And I'm going to grab a calligraphy brush. It's called Monoline. It's one of the default brushes that comes with Procreate. And it's a pretty decent, like, if you want to create something that's kind of reminding you of like the flat vector stuff you get in Illustrator, like this is a good brush to go with. It's a bit like a marker. It has its downsides, but it should get you most of the way there. So I'm going to go with Monoline, and I'm actually going to fill in this shape. I'm not too worried about making it perfect. And before I pick my pencil up at the end, I'm going to hold it again. And that looks terrible, so I'm going to redo that a little bit faster because it came out really bumpy. I'm going to draw it a little bit faster this time, and I'm going to hold it at the end again. And just like when I was drawing the line before, I now have this little like edit shape option. Sorry, I just hit the fruit basket. I have this edit shape option, and I'm going to use that to make this into a circle. It's not 100% of a perfect circle, but it's a more perfect circle than the one that I drew before. So you can use that to smooth out the shapes that Procreate creates for you. And I think it's particularly useful for this brush, or if you find that your shapes are a little blobby. And now I'm going to fill this shape in so it's solid. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to tap and hold on the color circle in the top right, and I'm going to drag it in, and it will fill the shape. This is super useful. I see looks of surprise and delight. Yeah, super useful for when you need to fill large areas. So anytime that you have any enclosed shape in Procreate, it does need to be with a brush that doesn't have too much texture. If you want to try this with a textured brush, it's a little bit trickier because Procreate kind of interprets it as being gaps. But if you have a solid outline, you can just fill it like that. It makes it super easy to get large blocks of color down. So I'm pretty happy with, actually I'm not happy with that color. That was a lie. I'm going to change the color. Go back to my color wheel, pick a slightly brighter color, and this is also nice. You can use the same function where I'm going to tap on the color circle and drag it onto the shape. And it should update, and it basically did not. There we go. Now the color is a little bit better than it was before. So I'm going to repeat that process for my other tree, and I think I'm actually going to put the other tree on a different layer. Just because if I decide I want to move it around later on, I think that's going to make it easier. So I'm going to draw my circle. This color is terrible. I need to pick another one. I'm going to fill it. Let's make that a good circle. Ellipse. I drew it so badly, Procreate doesn't even know it was supposed to be a circle. Wow. Well, that's handy because like I am, you can hit this button at the top that says ellipse, and it will give you kind of like anchor points like you would have in Illustrator, and you can drag them around and correct your horrible. Fill this in, and now I'm still not happy with this color, so maybe I'm going to make these a little bit more kind of like deeper greenish blue. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I'll do that for the other one. Much better. Now I'm going to go with the tree trunks. For the tree trunks, I'm actually going to create I'm going to use a brush that doesn't come preloaded with Procreate. I'm sorry. You can follow along with your monoline brush, but this is a brush that's it's a solid single width, and it's not pressure sensitive. I would have liked to show you how to create this brush from scratch, but we just don't have time. So what I'm going to do is create a darker color here, and I'm going to use this kind of thin brush. If you're using the thick one, you can still basically get a similar effect, just don't press so hard. And this will give you sort of like a thin, even line for the tree trunk and the branches. I'm going to do the same thing for the other ones. This is the one that was on the big tree. This is for the little tree. And oh, I need to move my layers around. There we go. So this is looking fine, like I wanted it to look more or less. I'm going to do another layer now for the ground, and I'm going to do the same thing with the straight line, where I'm going to hold it in place until Procreate corrects it for me. And then I think I'm going to do maybe like a orangey color for the bird. This one I'm not going to bother with trying to make the circle perfect. I think it's okay if it's hand-drawn. In general, speaking of perfect shapes, it's nice that Procreate has this functionality where it will correct a shape for you. That said, it's still not going to be, it's not quite accurate enough if you want to do something like technical illustration where you need things to be perfect and you need them to be measured. So I would say, like, if that's the kind of illustration that you're trying to do, like if you need something that's truly precise, then Procreate is maybe possible to do with Procreate, but it could be frustrating. So I would recommend using Procreate for times when you're comfortable with having something that comes out looking kind of hand-drawn, which is how this bird is going to look, for example. I'm going to finish up with, I'm going to go back to the color that I used previously. So you can see in the color palette, when I open it, I actually have this history here. So I can see all the colors that I've been using recently. And that's how I got to go back to this sort of like dark grayish teal, is it's in the second color in my history.
Is there also like a color picker?
Yeah, that's the wheel. Is that what you mean?
No, basically picking a color that is somewhere on my canvas and knowing which.
Yes. Yes, the way you do that is to tap and hold with your finger on the area and you get this little disc. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, this sure is an okay illustration so far. So I'm going to hide my sketch layer at this point. And that lets me see a few places that I want to fix. Like I think the tree trunks they're a little bit wobbly if we're being honest. So I'm going to actually figure out which tree trunk this is. Yes, I was showing and hiding the layer so I could identify it. It's the big one. I'm going to go ahead and use my eraser and just kind of get rid of that mistake there and make that a little bit cleaner and straighter. I'm actually going to change the thickness of my brush a little bit, which you can do on the left side, the top slider. It's really funny to see it on my screen changing without anyone happening. Use the top slider to change the thickness of your brush. The bottom slider is for opacity. And there, that's looking a little nicer. I'm going to do the same one for the other. And maybe I will clean up those bumps with the eraser just a little bit.
So you can change the flow of the pencil some way?
The flow, what do you mean?
Yeah, you know, in Photoshop, you have the flow and the opacity, and you can make it a little bit more real with the pencil, with the pressure or something like that? Or?
Yes, I'm not sure if there's an equivalent to flow. Actually, I don't adjust the flow metric on my Photoshop brushes that often, but the opacity, I mean, I can show you here. I mean, if I bring the opacity down, wow, you can't even see it actually. Yeah, you get a much softer line, and you also get the ability to build up opacity by drawing over the same stroke.
Perfect.
There are actually, I mean, if I said that I wasn't going to go into the Photoshop or the Procreate brushes because we really are short on time, but when you tap a second time on the brush, so many properties that you can change. That's why I didn't want to go into this menu because there's tons of them. But you can take any brush in Procreate and you have just as much control over it as you would in Photoshop. It's truly it's truly a fantastic tool, especially for the fact that it costs so little. So you can change basically every property that it makes this brush up, and you can almost turn any brush into any other brush.
Nice.
Yeah. So you can definitely find something similar.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So it's a pretty simple illustration. I would like to do one final step that's I'm going to use to show you also a couple of more advanced layer editing techniques. And that's going to be to add texture to the tops of the trees. I'm going to start with the top one. So I'm going to create a layer above the circle that's for my, my big tree. And I'm going to make that layer a clipping mask. The way I do that is to tap on the layer preview, and I get this menu that comes up. And I'll see an option here that says clipping mask, and then you get this little like sideways down pointing arrow thing. And what that does is it means that any content you create on this layer, the layer 9 that's selected now, will only extend as far as the edges of the layer below it. So what that means is that I can take a texture brush, like let's say I'm going to go into the charcoal and I'm going to use this willow charcoal. And I can draw along the edges of this tree now to create sort of a, okay, well, it looks like the tree was on fire, but you know, with a little time and patience, we could make it look a lot nicer. And here I don't have to worry about going past the edges of my shape. So I can create a texture that's inside this shape, and with a better texture than this one, then that was my doorbell, you can actually create a look that's kind of similar to cut paper. I have to answer my doorbell. I will be right back.
Any questions in the meantime? We can kind of collect for when Mary comes back from answering the door. Are people kind of following and trying to draw what she's drawing, or how are you guys doing this? I don't have an iPad, so I'm just watching.
I'm drawing
I do have
something
one,
else.
but I left it at home stupidly. So I'll do it later.
Yeah, I'm also following along.
Yeah, did anyone have questions so far?
Yeah. Yes, how do I move the canvas? I have to click the hand, or?
No, you just use your fingers.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I was thinking too complicated.
Two fingers, yeah. Yeah,
Mary, I had one. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. No, it's
I
fine.
had one short question only, which was you do this kind of filling a layer by dragging that top corner color thing into where you want to fill it, right? I try that sometimes, but every time it fills the entire canvas somehow, because I haven't closed the layer properly or something. Do you have like an easy way of addressing that to avoid that thing?
Yeah, I mean, if it won't fill it, so it's not like you have kind of something similar in Illustrator with the Live Paint tool. And with that tool, you can kind of do something called the gap detection, where you can tell it like how big of a space is acceptable for it to still be filled. There's nothing like that in Procreate. So as far as I know, if you're working with a brush that has texture, then I think it will never work, as far as I understand, because I think it interprets the texture as a gap. So if you're I might have to sit with you and look at this to see exactly what's happening. But in general, if the shape is filled and if it's filled with a solid brush, it should work.
Solid brush, that's a good advice. I think I'm always using some kind of weird texture pen, and then that doesn't work. Maybe that's the
I think it could be texture. Another, if it's for some reason, if it's something where you just can't actually fill the shape in and you still need to get down a huge chunk of color, just grab that monoline brush that I was using before in the calligraphy section and crank the volume all the way up, and you can fill the whole screen pretty quickly.
Cool.
Yeah. I would have liked to do a little bit more, but we're right at 3 p.m. now. And is this like a meeting room? Are we sharing this Zoom call so we can't stay on longer? Does anyone know?
No, we can stay in the Zoom for another 30 minutes.
Okay, so if anyone wants to hang around for a little bit longer, I'll just show you one or two more things that I had planned to review. I mean, this illustration isn't something I would post on my Instagram, but let's say I actually prepared it a little bit more cleanly. I think I did actually a test version that's a little bit nicer, which is how I wanted it to look. And okay, it's Instagram worthy, it's gonna go out to the world. So then you have the export options, which are inside of the gear menu on the top left. And there you would just use share. And actually, this is another thing that I always think is impressive about Procreate is the different formats that you can export in. You can export this as a Photoshop file, and it will have all of your layers intact. It will have transparency. You can take it into Photoshop and do so much more with it, which I think is a really it's just astounds me that it collaborates so well with the Adobe programs. But if you just want to send it to Instagram or post it somewhere for friends, you can have PDF, JPEG, PNG, TIFF, all of the usual stuff. One slightly more technical word of warning: if you're exporting, bless you, Dinko.
Thank you.
If you're exporting to Photoshop, if you have been using layer masks, which I didn't cover, but I can just show briefly, you can select a layer, click on the thumbnail and hit mask, and that gives you the option to refine the layer a little bit further in a non-destructive way. So here, like if I wanted to paint the texture out a little bit differently, for example, I could use a layer mask. And just something to watch out for if you're a person who's used to working with Photoshop, that if you bring this into Photoshop, the layer masks get unlocked. So if you take it into Photoshop, you had some layer mask and you need to move it around, the layer mask won't stay with the layer. They'll be broken apart from the layer. So you have to manually go in and lock them. Just a little technical word of warning. The other thing that I wanted to show is to talk about the time-lapse recording. Daniel had also asked a little bit about the animation assist. So in the most recent version of Procreate, they introduced a few more advanced animation options, which you get to by, I think you want add, or is it canvas? Canvas. And under the gear menu, the wrench menu, you have canvas, and then you have a button for animation assist. And what this gives you is at the bottom of the screen, it gives you a little animation timeline where you can, by default, Procreate puts every layer, I guess including the clipping mask, on its own frame inside the timeline. And it does the same thing with groups. So if you make group objects, that will be one frame in this timeline. So if you're a person who likes to animate, then you can do that to create an animation. I mean, it looks bonkers with this illustration because it wasn't created to be an animation. But this is a tool that you can use if you're a person who's interested in frame-by-frame animation. I actually prefer a different program for frame animation, which I will just plug really quickly, which is called Rough Animator. If you're interested in doing frame-by-frame animation by hand, I recommend this over Procreate. What you could do, since the interface in Rough Animator is a little bit limited, it is rough, as the name implies, is you can produce frame artwork in Procreate and then bring it into Rough Animator. Rough Animator is also really cheap. I think it's only €5. So you can do a lot with those two programs. That's all I have to say really about the animation tools in Procreate, just because I never use them because I think Rough Animator is better. The other thing you can do with video that you sometimes see people post with Procreate is, by default, Procreate will record everything that happens on your canvas. To see this, it turns into a time-lapse video if that's what you want. So you can go into this wrench menu again and you click on video, and then you have this option that says time-lapse replay, and it shows you everything from the very beginning, super sped up. And that can be actually really fun. Like if you've spent a long time making something and you think it's awesome, like, I don't know, I think it adds a little bit of interest and value to show people like your process of creating it, especially if it's a super long illustration. Okay, and that is everything that I had planned to show you guys today. Does anyone have extra questions or other things that they'd like to see? No?
No, it's super awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice.
Thank you so much for being patient with the unanticipated technical difficulties and the delivery people. This was definitely my least professionally presented masterclass of all time, but that's okay, we made it. And yeah, if anyone thinks of questions afterwards that they want to ask, or in the distant future when factory reopens and we're all there again, you can also come up to me and ask me questions in the moment, and I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, and maybe if there's interest and there's questions, let us know, and maybe there could be like a part 2 to this, goes into a specific topic at some point in the future if you have the availability and the time for that. Maybe we can, like the brushes, if that's something that it comes up for everybody, it could be maybe like a isolated in-depth thing if there's questions like that.
Yeah, it was hard to know what to decide to cover because the program is so dense and I couldn't do everything.
No, but this is awesome. It just gives you exactly an idea of how to get started. All the tricky things that, yeah, you just need to kind of have in your repertoire to move along.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really useful stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I have an idea. What if we now, for the selfie, I'm gonna stop sharing Mary's screen, and for the selfie, everybody holds up their iPad and see what they've drawn throughout this hour as they were drawing along with Mary. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Come on, Narta, show your stuff.
Okay, so
Oh,
I'm
this-
gonna do the selfie.
Yeah,
I'm
do the
gonna do the
selfie.
selfie. Okay, show yourself. 3. Come on, guys. Come on.
I
Don't
made
be
a
shy. Don't
Croatia
be
balloon.
shy.
Ooh.
Oh,
cool detail.
nice.
Oh,
3,
nice.
2,
Croatian balloon.
1.
That's, I like that one.
Cool.
I want
Nice.
to see everyone's. Oh, nice. Nobody else drew trees.
I just followed your instructions, just different colorings.
That's exactly what I wanted people to do, so it's fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
I
bearing.
mean, we're not professional masterclass people. We're just people from the community taking initiative. So I think for that, it was super awesome, especially in a busy week like this that you took the time.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, my pleasure. I hope you got your money's worth.
Yeah, that was-
Exactly. Yes, and
And
thanks a
yeah,
lot
this
for.
is the idea. So
No, go on.
yeah, this is the idea. So if other people have like something they're kind of super, I don't know, passionate about, this is the idea that we just share whatever is kind of our thing with the others. And yeah, just get in touch and let us know if there's something that you like to geek out on.
Yeah, if it goes well, for now we're gonna do more of these mini masterclasses on different topics. So hopefully next week one as well, and then we'll see how we organize our schedule. But more of this stuff is coming, and indeed, if something fun comes to mind, please do share.
Cool, then
Thanks
see you
again.
soon, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good Friday. See you at checkout drinks. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a nice weekend.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Fruit bowl over.
This is cool. There's still 3 Marys here. This is nice.
Oh my god, I've never been so many all at once. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, well done. Thanks for also sorry for that. We also that's on us because we should have done some prep and get the meeting room and prepared that a little.
Yeah, having the meeting room early would have been the main thing, but also I really should have tested that beforehand, so it's fine.
No, I mean in the end it worked out, and I really like that we had the both cams. That's actually really fun because you do see the screen share, but then you always miss the pen. So now you've got both, and the football. I got a screenshot. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself for improvising.
Yeah, for sure. Well done, and thanks for that.
Is Narca coming back now?
Yeah,
I'm having
Martha's
time
coming
to
back.
realize
She's like,
that there-
oh yeah. Now you want to see what's going on.
Yeah.
We're just gossiping about you, Narta.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is she gone? Yeah.
This was so awesome. Honestly,
Thank you.
like really, it's so awesome to see somebody just do it. And yeah,
Yes.
you're really good at explaining what you're doing. Some people, I think, they just get lost in the work, and then they're like, do, and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah.
But how-
I did practices. I sat down start to finish, and that's how I figured out that I was not going to be able, because I was going to do a full